everyone, my name is Amber and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about The Shadow Friend, or The Shadows by Alex North. It's got two different titles in the US and the UK, so I am going to be referring to it as The Shadow Friend because that's how I know it, but do be aware that it's the same book. So Alex North is the author of The Whisper Man, which was a massive hit when it came out last year. Everyone was talking about it, most people seemed to love it, and I personally really enjoyed it and thought that it was super creepy and atmospheric. The Shadow Friend is Alex North's second book. It's another adult thriller slash horror book. It's about a man called Paul who goes back to his hometown to see his dying mother. We learn that in the past, as a teenager, Paul was involved somewhat in a group of friends who were involved in a murder. A boy called Charlie Crabtree killed another person in the woods near the boys' houses. Several years later, during the current timeline, there is a copycat murder and something very similar happens. That's the basic premise of the plot, and I don't really want to go into too much detail because obviously it's a thriller, you expect a lot of twists and turns. I personally don't really like reading or hearing about the synopses for thrillers all that much because I worry that they give too much away. So that's where I'm going to leave the synopsis. Now we're going to talk about my thoughts and feelings towards the book. Just have to shift you over because my light has died and so we're having to use natural lighting. Love that. So I've got three main things that I want to talk about here today. The first one being the plot, the second thing being the atmosphere, and the third one being the characters, because I think those are the three things that stand out most about The Shadow Friend. So I think if you were to compare The Shadow Friend to The Whisper Man, you would find that the plot is a lot slower in The Shadow Friend. I found the book to be much slower paced up until the ending, which seemed somewhat rushed actually. So for the majority of the book, it's kind of just plodding along. You're getting to know Paul and his problems and what went on in the past. It's told in dual timelines, so we go from Paul in present day to Paul in the past when he's interacting with Charlie Crabtree and the rest of his friends. Slowly you learn why the past is now relevant today. I think throughout the book from the very beginning you know that something isn't as it seems, especially because it's a thriller, it's what you come to expect. But I think Alex North does a really good job of putting in some small things that kind of niggle at the reader, and you just know something isn't being presented truthfully or accurately and the characters are all hiding something. I really liked the dual timeline aspect. I think that instead of being confusing, it was very linear, and Alex North did a really good job of captivating you and then making it obvious when you were switching timelines, which is something that I sometimes struggle with in books because sometimes it does get a bit confusing with all the back and forth. But I think Alex North did a really good job in this one. In terms of whether or not I saw the twist coming, I have to say I didn't see parts of it. I was kept on my toes the entire time. I really enjoyed it, and that I think made up for the slower pace of the novel because I was trying to figure out what was going on, and the intrigue kind of made up for the fact that the novel at the beginning was slower paced. Like I said, the ending is a little bit rushed, but at the same time I think Alex North really kept the atmosphere throughout. Now I guess I'm going to talk about the atmosphere because that's a really good segue into that. If I had to pick one word to describe this book, I would say it's chilling. I really like that Alex North is tackling fictional local stories in both The Shadow Friend and The Whisper Man. In The Whisper Man he talks about the man who goes up to people's windows and steals the children, and in The Shadow Friend you learn about the woods behind the boy's house and the local legend that's there and how that came to be. And I think it's such a creative way of writing a thriller or horror story. I think it makes you feel really connected with the characters because it's more of a personal thing instead of just a random murder that has no connection to the actual town or the families involved. In my own hometown there are a couple of local legends, I guess you could say. The two that are most relevant to me were actually about the woods that were behind my house where I lived with my granddad. We had this place called the Half Hour Pond, and it is said if you walked around 12 times at midnight a woman's ghostly hand would come up through the pond. And on a darker note, apparently the pond really drew in people who were having a hard time and wanted to end their lives. And kind of less dark, there's also a legend about the woman in white who wanders through the orchards. I think that is the reason why I really enjoy the local legend aspect of Alex North's stories. It really connects with me. You should let me know in the comments if you guys have any local legends from your hometowns. I would be really interested to hear about those. I think adding to the creepy atmosphere were the fact that the woods were super creepy with the stories and things, and then the teenagers as well were super disturbing. Charlie Crabtree and his friend, whose name I can't remember, talked about lucid dreaming and getting people killed, and they were so manipulative and just creepy. I don't really have any other words to describe them, and it made me hate children even more than I already do. That's a joke, don't unsubscribe. I would definitely read more books from Alex North just for the atmosphere because I think he does a fantastic job of really building up the creepy atmosphere with the characters and the setting. So now, as for the characters of the book, I personally don't think that any of of them are very memorable. I think the atmosphere is the most memorable part of Alex North's books. Going forward, I don't think I would necessarily remember any of these main characters. If someone had to ask me to choose one of my favourite characters from thrillers or horror books, I definitely wouldn't be picking any of these. And I think that's shown in that I can only really remember the main character's name, Paul, and Charlie Crabtree, because it's just such an unusual name. I really think that writing characters is Alex North's weakest point in both of his books, because I think I had the same or a similar sort of issue with The Whisper Man. I really think to make Paul more of a standout main character to me would have been to develop his relationship with his dying mother some more. I think that that could have been focused on a little bit more and we could have learned a bit more about both of them, but instead Paul only really learned about what his mother was doing once it was too late, and it was too late in the book to do anything about it. I personally don't think Alex North wanted to make that relationship as big of a thing, so that's why it was kind of left out of the book, which is understandable, but I think that's what would have made Paul seem more of a sympathetic character to me. So overall, I'm going to give The Shadow Friend, or The Shadows, 4 stars. It was very atmospheric, as I keep saying, and while it's not something that I would necessarily go back and reread, it's definitely a book that I would recommend to a lot of people. I'm really excited to see what Alex North comes out with next, and I keep hoping he's going to release something around Halloween, because I think that would be the perfect time to read his books, except his books always seem to come out in the spring or summer. That's my review of The Shadow Friend. Thank you so much for watching. If you've read this book already, then let me know what you thought in the comments below, or if you're excited for this book, also let me know. Thank you for watching, and I'll speak to you all in my next video. Bye!